It was in a small house on the south side of Atlanta where my granddad helped me to have the first dose of reality that I was a black child. I remember the day so vividly. I can see the furniture and feel the air and still smell the breakfast that my grandmother was cooking: bacon, eggs, coffee, and toast. I was 10 years old, and I was sitting across from my grandfather, his hands worn from providing for his family because he worked for many years, while the gray from his hair and his beard spoke of the existential experiences he collected as a black man. He leaned towards me to offer what I now treasure as words of wisdom for my kids, Zion and Terence. He said, "This world will be hard for you, and you will be mistreated because of the color of your skin, but you have to remember one thing: you always have your family. That's your support system." At 10 years old, I was unaware of the atrocities faced by my ancestors and what it meant to live in brown skin. But my grandfather made sure that I knew to exist in this skin came with a set of circumstances that would trail me for the rest of my life. I remember my 10-year-old brain not fully comprehending what he was saying, but I knew it must have been necessary because I could feel my palms sweating and the fear starting to rise. What did he mean? Why would he tell me something so serious? You see, the talk is a sort of rites of passage in the black family, because black children essentially are taught how to behave in a world set up to see black skin to mitigate potential harm. It's a conversation that black parents and black grandparents consider a necessary evil, dreading the day where their children go from being innocent to being considered threats. According to research, black children have an adult view of racial social constructs as early as age 10. And for generations, the talk has been a mainstay in black families. At some point, black children all get warnings from elders about how to avoid and survive police encounters. These talks continued to come from my uncles, the local recreational center where I played sports, my uncles, and even my mother. I started to have this type of anxiety that made me wonder, would it be safe to exist while black? The more I heard the talk, the more I struggled with questions. And sometimes those questions went unanswered. I was being taught how to behave, but not how to maintain the natural joy I had from being a child. I'll never forget my mother giving me her own passionate version of the talk when I became a teenager. A single mother raising 2 children, one being a son in a world that sees color. Always keep your hands out of your pocket when you are in a store. If you don't have money, do not go into the store. If people are watching you and while you're shopping, pull your money out of your pocket and make it visible. Although this talk came from a place of concern, most times it produces a fear that children have to live with. My mom told me, when you start to drive and you get pulled over, keep your hands on the wheel, 10 and 2. Do not wear baggy clothes. Keep your haircut low. Because you are a young black man, you already have 2 strikes against you. Never pick up anything that you don't intend to buy. All of these rules seemed overwhelming for me. Now I'm 13 years old, and those words became a reality. One day, I was at a park with some of my friends, and the police officers drove up in 2 cars. They hopped out of the car. They told me and my friends to come over to the curb, to stand on the curb. One of my friends yelled out, "We haven't done anything," to which one of the officers made us sit on the curb and then unholstered his gun. Could this be what my grandfather and grandmother and mom were talking about? The fear began to settle in. Me and my friends made it home that night, but I left thinking that could have been my last night. These thoughts began to fill my mind as I would see black men and black women depicted in negative ways on television. Who are we? Where did we come from? Why is there so much hatred towards us? You see, gaps were missing in the talk. I did not understand the greatness and the gifts I possessed, and instead lived in a perpetual fear of people, of how people might perceive me to be. There were times when I needed someone to say, it's true you'll be treated poorly in some settings because of whiteness, but your blackness is not defined by whiteness. Yes, it's true that you are the seed of ancestors who built pyramids and ruled land as kings and queens and maintained their joy, community, and faith, and despite oppression. You are from a people who are ideators and intellectuals and scholars and inventors. You have not been defined by history, but you've helped to shape history. I learned black history from watching my grandparents. I saw images contrary to what the TV told me who black people were. My grandparents were married 70 years before my grandfather's death. Papa Herman modeled what it meant for me to have joy. He once said, son, when you get your family, make sure that you make them a priority. I know with that message, I would have to prepare myself to give the talk, but I would have to give it differently. And then my turn came to give the talk. My son walks into the room right after George Floyd was murdered. I can still see the news stations showing the knee pressed against the neck of Mr. Floyd, and then flashing to tanks and police officers in the streets, standing on guard while peaceful protesters gathered to mourn Mr. Floyd's death and to advocate against police brutality. My 9-year-old son walks in and notices that the tanks on the television looks different from the toys that he was playing with. And here comes the questions. Dad, why are there tanks on the television? And why did that knee was pressed against the neck of that other man? What is a protest? After all these years of processing the talk, it's game time. And I find myself a little unprepared to have the talk. I'm in the driver's seat. And while I say I was unprepared, I actually was prepared. It's kind of how Olympic sprinters still get nervous at the start of the race, despite the fact that they've been training their whole lives. This is how I was. I was nervous, but I was ready because I had a head start. I had been having the talk with my children before they could even talk. Every day discussing their worth, their value, their potential, and the long legacy of our black heritage. Every morning they hear that they are leaders who this world needs. Every day they are affirmed and validated. This mattered because I did not want the talk meant to ensure their physical safety to compromise the preservation of their joy. Because having to tell your children to reduce themselves to the least objectionable agent is a humiliating feeling, and one that places the fear of blackness in children. You see, the real talk is about black existence and not white superiority. Why? Because the fear of the talk perpetuates this long dragged out sense of imposter syndrome that spills over into adulthood. You see, it's time to tell our children, you're not how you are treated because you wear a hoodie. You're not who they say you are because you sell items outside of a New York store. You do deserve to breathe and to sleep in your apartment and to go for a jog down the street and not just be chased down and hunted. And the talk has to exist across races. White parents are charged with teaching their children to be anti-racist as we teach our children to embrace their full selves without any fear of their existence. After explaining this to my son and what a protest was, he decided that we should have our own peaceful protest at home. I learned that his confidence in wanting to do that directly resulted from all the conversations we'd had with him and my daughter about their worth. He saw worth in Mr. Floyd even when other people didn't. My son's question prompted me to remember not to give the routine talk I received, but it was a moment to change the narrative. You see, many parents, teachers, and guardians tend to teach as they were taught, but I intentionally wanted to teach a new talk, so I propose a new talk. I offer you a talk that will uplift our children each day. We must understand that our children need a daily talk about their greatness in this world despite white supremacy. If we aren't talking to them daily, negative images about blackness are showing them who we are. We must approximate positive images of black joy and black success to reinforce this idea that they are free to take up space in a world of whiteness. And we must intentionally place these images of joy around our homes to ensure that our children see themselves as being a part of a joyful culture. We must learn new ways to empower them and to talk about history, to encourage them to dream of a world where our blackness matters. Every single second that we don't teach history, they are losing information about our heritage. We must invite them to ask unlimited questions about black adulthood and answer any questions that they may have about black existence. Questions give us an opportunity to correct misinformation. We must focus on intentionally sharing our experiences, learning new historical information with them. We must be truthful about what we do not know and talk to them every chance we get about what we do know. Lastly, we must take them to do fun things where no fear is present to reinforce their joy. Because the more we normalize joy, the more joy becomes normal. Exposing black children to positive imagery is more valuable than the struggle our community has endured because of white supremacy. It's critical to teach our children that their blackness is not a life sentence, it's not a mistake, and it's not a punishment to be feared. Indeed, our blackness is a gift, a beautiful artistry, an expression of God's creation. Let's uplift our children and preserve their innocence and joy. Thank you.